Okay, we're talking about Barfield's ideas of original participation, the onlooker separation, and final participation. And we've been working with the idea that original participation goes all the way back to when we were not even matter yet, we were united with the divine, and that in the traditions of the East, these ideas are carried forward and become parts of the tradition. They become parts of the language that is used by the East to talk about these things, and in particular the ego. Okay, now in the onlooker separation, this took a lot of time to happen. It was a long, long time before the human being was really separated out into himself from prior conditions of unification with the world. And if we look at the history of civilizations, we can map this out, and if we do what Barfield does, which looks at the history of the languages, we can see these changes in consciousness, and the onlooker separation arises at a very particular time of which everybody is pretty much aware in a way, because we called aspects of this the Copernican revolution in Western civilization. Now that's a period of time in which the human being began to look at the world as if it was over there and he's over here. Now that's the state we are in today. The world is over there and we are over here. That didn't used to be the way things were. Now this emancipation, or this pressing of the human being out of a unified state, took a long period of time, and many, many things happened during the course of this. And you can get into Rudolf Steiner's histories of these developments and other people's work, and there's a whole lot one can learn about the evolution of consciousness. Here I just want to point out some high water marks and some distinctions so we can appreciate this thing. Okay? For example, not only does natural science arise because it's the first time in the history of human consciousness that human beings stood sort of outside the world, which before that time they had participated in to some degree, and began to have thoughts on the basis of that standpoint. They begin to look at the world as consisting of things as opposed to processes in which they were involved. Okay, natural science arises at that point, and other things happen at the same time. For example, in painting, up to that time, there was no perspective. So with the onlooker separation, we arrive at artists noticing this change, and they introduce perspective, and it doesn't communicate itself from one artist to another in the social process. It's actually a change in consciousness among all kinds of artists in many different places, so that perspective in painting appears in lots of different places more or less simultaneously, because the artist is now seeing the world as if it's over there and he's over here, and he has to put it into perspective in order to paint the way he feels about the world. There's a book called Art and Human Consciousness by Gottfried Richter that one can read about this. If you want to read, what the history of languages can teach you about this, you want to read on Barfield, Saving the Appearances, and also his Speaker's Meaning. If you want to read about the processes of science, you want to read Ernst Lehr's book, Man or Matter. So there's books that you can read, and I'll be pointing out some of them, about this transformation from original participation to the onlooker separation. In the time of original participation, that's where we get the language things that that became traditional in European languages, such that we would talk about T.R.D. Chardin, all right? T.R. from Chardin. The man was from a place. That's his part of his identity was the place. Someone could be John's son, and they became maybe Mark, John's son, or as language progressed, it becomes Johnson. Okay? So all of these changes in language give us pictures of this transformation out of original participation and into the onlooker separation. There's a book by a guy by the name of Michael Doris called The Broken Chord, which is basically a story about his raising a child with fetal alcohol syndrome. But Michael Doris has some Native American background to him, and he writes in that book about, in the language, the traditional language in which he was raised, you can't say, I hit you. You can only say, we hit us. So if you look at these languages, you will find this, sorry for all the time, but I have allergies. Anyway, so you can look at these situations and you can see all kinds of, I won't say debris, but you might say echoes of the prior condition of original participation in lots and lots of places. But now we're in the onlooker separation. And of course the onlooker separation comes into existence for a number of different reasons. And these can be somewhat complicated. And I'm going to give sort of a precise overview, which is based on my own research and understanding. And I don't expect you to buy it, okay? I don't want you to buy it. But I want to present this idea to you for your consideration. And this is going to turn upside down a whole lot of ideas people have about Christianity, for example. Let's just say that most of traditional Christianity doesn't know what it's talking about when it tries to give us conceptions of the nature of what happened 2,000 years ago. For example, in most traditional religions of various kinds, and I'm including the religions of the East, there is an idea that takes different forms, but it's the idea of the Creator. And in the East, the Creator is called by different names. And in the Aboriginals of the world, and in the American Indian, for example, there's the idea of the Creator. And in fact, in the Hopi stories, of their Hopi oral histories, they talk about meeting the Creator. And you'll find all kinds of different ways in which the Creator is represented. Okay. Now what I want you to consider as entirely possible, that the reason that the events that occurred in Palestine 2,000 years ago is because the Creator became human in order to participate with us in what it means to be human. There's a lot of different theological discussions based on the Gospels and other things about what the heck God was doing becoming a man, but the biggest chief reason was because of love of us and His willingness to experience what we experience, which is to be human and to go through the gate of death. Okay, and this is the Creator that did this, the Creator of everything.